All right, so this is going to be an awesome, unique limud instead of just doing the typical daf yomi. So this is going to be great. This is going to be great, a great limud for anyone that wants to just take it a little slower. I think it's going to be great. So let's get right into it. So the famous question that you start with shas is, okay, it jumps out to you. That's the first thing that shas starts with. Why this? Why specifically Kriya Shema? Why does shas start with that mitzvah? What's so special about it? There's a bunch of different answers to this. Just two answers I thought was interesting, so we won't delve too deeply into this. After a bar mitzvah bacher becomes bar mitzvah, that happens after shkia, that happens after the next day comes, right? What's the first mitzvah he does? He goes dalvin's ba'arv, he says Kriya Shema. So after one becomes a bar chiyuv, the first mitzvah one does as a bar chiyuv is Kriya Shema. So therefore, shas starts off with the first mitzvah that one does as a bar chiyuv. I thought that was a very interesting answer. Another one the Rambam says is, when someone goes to a doctor, he has a health problem. Oftentimes, most of the time in fact, the doctor will say, change up your diet, right? You're not eating the right quantities of food, you're not eating the right types of foods, change up your diet. That's the first thing the doctor will do. That's why we learn brachos to begin shas. The first thing we learn is quantities of foods. What are the quantities to make certain brachos? How much should you eat? What you should eat? All these things about food, essentially nutrition, right? To a certain extent, that's the first thing we learn in shas. So therefore, once the Gemara starts off with brachos, once the shas starts off with the Masechta of brachos, so then we just start off with the first thing that brachos talks about, which is Kriya Shema. Another interesting point. There are other answers, but we'll get right into it instead. One more point, just about a beautiful concept. We're going to go through shas now, Be'ezras Hashem, and the first letter of shas, Mishnayos, which is Mem, and the last letter of shas Mishnayos is also a mem. Hashem Yivarech Amar V'Shalom. It's a mem. The first mem of shas is a mem psucha. It's an open mem, and the last mem is a closed mem. To teach us that when we start shas, we think it's open, it's easy, it's fun. This is going to be great. We know everything, but then when you go through shas, you see, wow, it opens your eyes to so many things. There's so much I don't know, and the more they say that the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know, and that's definitely the case with shas. It opens your eyes to so many different things, and it gives you so many opportunities to learn new concepts and new ideas in Torah. And at the end, when you finish the whole thing, you realize, wow, there was so much I didn't know, and there's still so much I didn't know. And of course, it's very important to review and go over it again and again and again until you plug it into your head. That's the way us human beings were born. We need to keep on persisting and keep on learning and do chazara in order to retain our learning. Let's jump right into it. When does one read Shema at night? Meaning, when is the earliest time one can read Kriya Shema? At night. So the first answer given, which is actually the only answer given for the early time, is from the time that the Kohanim go into the Heichel to eat Truma, right? When they would be required, the Kohanim, they were Tvul Yom, meaning earlier in that day, they were required to go to the mikvah, and then after Shkia, they would become tahar. A Kohen obviously cannot eat Truma when he's tameh. He has to become tar. So the process was that day, he went to the mikvah, and then the nighttime came, and he became tar, and he was able to eat Truma. So when that time came, meaning the next day came, and they went in to eat Truma, that's when one can begin reciting Kriya Shema. Ad Seifa Shmua Rishayna, until the end of the first watch time, which we will discuss in the Gemara, Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. Chacham say until Chatzais, 12, 1 o'clock. It's different time depending on the minhag, depending on the place, until Chatzais. Until dawn. Rabbi Gamliel says you have the entire night until dawn to read Kriya Shema. There's a story, very interesting, right? Rabbi Gamliel was a smart man. He knew that to draw a crowd in, he got to start with a story. So the first Mishnah in Shas, and there are not many stories in Mishnais to begin with, but the first Mishnah in Shas, he starts in with his story to compel you and to bring us in. He's a smart man. There was a story that the sons came from a party at night. They said to him, "Like Karinu Eshema, we didn't read Shema yet. What do we do?" So he said to them, if dawn did not come yet, then you guys are chayiv to read. Even though past chatzais, still you guys are chayiv to read. And this wasn't the only thing he taught them, the only chiddush he taught them. Ella, he taught them another chiddush. Kol masha amur chacham ad chatzos mitzvos and ad shial amud shachar. Anytime the chacham say until chatzos, it's really a mitzvah until amud shachar. Meaning the sons came after chatzos, so they thought, listen, the chachamim said that after chatzos you can't read Kriya Shema anymore. So therefore, we're part from reading Kriya Shema now. So it comes over a middle and says, no, really the mitzvah is until dawn, which is gives you another few hours, right? And we see the same concept by Hektar Chalav and by burning the fats, ve'evarim, and the limbs, that it's a mitzvah ad shial amud shachar. And anything that's eaten that day, meaning if there's a carbon that's supposed to be brought on a specific day, that it can be eaten until Amud Shachar, not just until Chatzos. You have until Amud Shachar. So we see that there's so many different halachos that apply that the Chacham say until Chatzos. You can only do this until Chatzos. You can only do Hektar Chalav until Chatzos. You can only read Kriya Shema until Chatzos. And yet Rabbi Gamliel is coming and saying, no, you really have until dawn. You really have until Amud Shachar. So then why did the Chacham say Chatzos? Say Amud Shachar. The Mishnah answers, in order to distance a person from doing an Avera, right? So therefore you won't procrastinate. To prevent procrastination, we say do it earlier, and then b'diavad, if after Chatzos you haven't said Kriya Shema yet, then you can still do it Amud Shachar. But ideally do it before Chatzos to distance yourself from missing the time of Kriya Shema. All right, let's jump right into the Gemara. Tana hecha ka'ik diktani me'emasai. So the Gemara starts off with a palm kasha. Tana hecha, learn where instead of when. Meaning, where do we know that there's a chiyuv to say Kriya Shema to begin with? You're going to tell me when? You never even told me where we know such a concept. And furthermore, another question. Why is the first thing we learn the nighttime? You would think that the first question would be asked on the morning. When do we read Kriya Shema? In the morning, right? I mean, that's the way it happens, daytime and then nighttime. So why is the first thing we learn, when do you read Kriya Shema at night? The first thing should be, when do you read Kriya Shema in the morning? Makes the most sense. You get up in the morning, first thing you do. So two questions here by the Gemara. The Gemara starts off. So Tana Krakai. So the Gemara answers that let's learn it because it's referring to a pasuk. That's why the question is worded this way. It's referring to a pasuk. The pasuk says b'shach b'cha uvkumecha. When you should lie down and you get up, right? When you lie down, when you get up. V'hachi katani zman kriya shema deshchiva emas misha shakahanam nechlas l'chol b'shumasan. The first thing the pasuk says is b'shach b'cha, which is nighttime. It's referring to lying down. B'shach b'cha means to lie down, and that's where therefore it's referring to nighttime. When does one read Kriya Shema? When he lies down, at the time that the Kohanim go into Truma. That's what the Mishnah said. When does one read Kriya Shema at night? From the time the Kohanim go into Truma. So why? So that answers the question. Why does the Mishnah start off by saying when? Why doesn't it tell us where we learn it from? The answer is because it refers to a pasuk. The pasuk says b'shach b'cha. It tells us the where. The pasuk tells us the where. So therefore, obviously, if Torah Shabbat an important lesson here, right? Right in the beginning, another smart thing Rabbi Gamliel did, he connected the beginning of Torah Shabbat to Torah Shabbat. Why are we asked me Amosai? Because the Torah talks about the when. So therefore, when we start Torah Shabbat Peh, we'll also talk about the when as well. Okay, another answer. Yalif mi brias shalom. Maybe it was learned out from the creation of the world. First it says nighttime, vahi erev, vahi vaiker, and then it says the morning time. Therefore, just like the order of creation, so too the order of the first Mishnah. In the Seifa of this exact Mishnah, which we'll learn later, Be'ezus Hashem, it actually learns it in the opposite order. It says in Shachris we make two brachas before Kriya Shema and one bracha after. We know in Berachos Kriya Shema in the morning we make two brachas before we recite the actual Kriya Shema and one bracha after. I don't understand. It's inconsistent. Over here you're telling me we want to learn the nighttime first because that's what the pasuk says. But yet later in the Mishnah it learns the morning first. So why the inconsistency? Either don't do A, B, A, B. Don't do A, B, B, A. Why the inconsistency? Stick with it. So the Gemara answers, Tana psach ba'arbis v'hadur tani b'shachris. We began learning with the nighttime for the reasons that we mentioned. B'shach b'chav kamecha mentions b'shach b'chav first. V'hadur tani b'shachris. And then we learned shachris. Then we got into a discussion about when does one read Kriya Shema in the morning. Adik tani b'shachris parshmili the shachris. Once we were already talking about the morning time, so the conversation of the morning time continues, right? Because the first thing was nighttime, second thing was morning time. Once we're already talking about morning, talk about morning again, and then we'll come back to the nighttime. So we don't want to go jump from one topic to the other. Don't jump from night to morning, from night to morning. No, we started with night because the pasuk starts with the night, and then we went to the morning. And then once we were on the morning and we wanted to teach another halacha, so we're going to start with the morning since we're there already. No reason to jump the gun. Okay. Let's go a little more. Amar mishashe hakohanim nechnasin lechol b'trumas. The Mishnah says, quoting the Mishnah, that when does one have the earliest time for one to read Kriya Shema? From the time that Kohanim went in to eat Truma. Michti, let us see. Kohanim emas ka'achli Truma. When did the Kohanim begin to eat Truma? Shash teicha chavim, from teisa chavim. So, the Gemara asks, listening to Shash teisa chavim, the Gemara is suggesting I have a much simpler way of you asking this question, of you answering the question, I should say. Instead of the Mishnah answering, when do we read Kriya Shema? When the Kohanim go in to eat Truma, when they were Tol Yom, and this whole halacha. Instead of saying that, just say Teisek HaChavim. Very simply, Teisek HaChavim, when the stars come out. That's all I need. Why do you have to tell me a whole drasha instead of just saying the exact time? So Gemara says, Milsa Agav Orcha Kamashman. It's coming to teach us a separate thing. Kill two birds in one stone, right? The Gemara was trying to teach us two halachos by teaching us, not just teaching us the time, but also what happens in that time. Number one, we're trying to teach us when is the time that the Kohanim eat Truma? From Teisak HaChavim. And it also comes to teach us that a kapara is not me'akev, which means that a kohen, when he becomes tahar, on the day that he's a tful yom, meaning that he's going to become tahar that night, he brings a carbon in order to make him tahar. There's a process in order for a kohen to become tahar. Two things he needs to do. He needs to go to the mikvah and he needs to bring a carbon, right? But let's say he just brings a carbon. Let's say he goes to the mikvah and he didn't bring a carbon yet. So if he goes to the mikvah and he didn't bring a carbon yet, even though he's not technically completely tahar, still he can eat truma. We mentioned, remember, in order for a kohen to eat truma, he needs to be tahar. And here he only did one of the two steps. There's two steps, and he only did one of them. He didn't bring the carbon yet. And yet, even though he's only like half tahar, we'll call it, even though that's not really what it is, but even though he's only half tahar, he can still eat truma. So the kapara, the carbon, or the lack of bringing a carbon, la ma'akva, is not ma'akev, does not uproot his ability to eat truma. Okay, the time we learned in a brisa, uba shemesh v'tahar. The sun comes and it's metahar him, and it makes him tahar. B'yasai shemesh me'akvasai. The b'yasai shamshai, meaning the sun coming down, the next day coming, that me'akvasai milechol b'truma. Unless, if the next day hasn't come yet, then of course he can't eat truma. He's not tahar at all. But if the next day came and he didn't bring the carbon yet, he's still able to eat truma. Umimai dahayu ba shemesh biyasa shemesh. How do we know when the pasuk says uba shemesh, it's referring to going from daytime to nighttime? Maybe it's referring from going to nighttime to daytime, meaning the sun rising. How do we know it's referring to the sun falling? Maybe it's the sun rising. V'hai v'tahar, in the second part of the pasuk says v'tar tahar yaima. How do we know it's going on the day making him tahar? Maybe when it says it's coming, it's referring to light. Like I said, it's referring to the sun rising. Tahar gavra. Maybe tahar is going on the person, that the person has to do an action to make himself tahar. We said that when the sun falls, that automatically makes the kohen tahar, as long as he's done the other things. He's done the mikvah and he's done the carbon. But as long as he's done that, the sun comes and boom. How do we know that's the case? Maybe he has to do something. If so, the pasuk should have said vayitar, and he will become pure, right? He will become pure. My vitar seems to be that he will become, he just is. It's a state of being. Instead of him actually doing something to become, he just is. He is tahar. Tahar yaima. Therefore, we see the day makes him tahar. He doesn't have to do anything. It's a state of being. The sun comes, he's tahar. That's it. End of story. So in the West, meaning in Eretz Yisrael, whenever it says Baba Rava, it's referring to Eretz Yisrael, they had the exact same conversation. because they did not hear about this conversation, this Gemara that we just read. And they asked, same exact thing we said before, right? This Ba Shemesh, how do we know is it? They asked the question, does Ba Shemesh mean when the sun comes? And does Tahar mean Tahar Yaima, that the day makes him Tahar? Or maybe it means when the sun rises. Instead of being when the sun falls, it means when the sun rises. Tahar Gavra. And when it says Tahar, it's Tahar Gavra. It means that the person actually needs to do something. Same thing we said before. And afterwards, what happened? They found this brisa that we're going to learn soon. But this Gemara that we already learned, and they learned this in a brisa, and it was a simon too. That's the latest time, meaning that is after Tzezek Achavim. That is the time that the Kohanim can eat truma. So they learned this exact halacha that we already knew. So in summation, what did we learn? We learned that why does the Mishnah use the lashon of saying that from the time that the Kohanim go in to eat truma, that's when we can recreate Shema. Just say Tzezek Achavim. Right? It's because it teaches us two things, and those two things we learn out from a pasuk, and we know specifically that the pasuk is referring to those things from the previous proofs. Tahar means that a kohen, number one, that when is the time that a kohen can eat truma? And number two, that a kohen is going to become tahar that night, right? Even if he didn't bring the carbon, he can still eat truma. All right, that was very fun. Thank you for joining, everyone. And Mirz Hashem, this is going to be a good ride. Shas is awesome. It's packed. Thank you.